Well, buenas tardes and good evening to everyone, as a certain Iron General used to say. So unexpectedly, Trump is kicking migrants out of the US, can you imagine? This is what happens when you come to power and promise to kick out migrants. He's actually doing it. Of course, for many people it's obviously not funny, but overall it turns out to be something pretty terrible. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel, and now that you've subscribed, let's take a look. This is amazing. Look at what we have here. Trump intends to revoke the visas of 200,000 asylum seekers. The US authorities are preparing the largest visa revocation for asylum seekers in the country's history. The largest in the country's history. Not in a year, not in two, but in the entire history of the US. Of course, the country hasn't existed that long, especially by geological standards, but still. And here is what they tell us. Both business visas and tourist visas will be revoked for those foreigners who have applied for asylum in the US. According to the agency, if the decision is not appealed or reviewed, in the coming weeks, Georgia ZD plans to revoke Business B1 and Tourist B2 visas from foreigners together with the Department of Homeland Security, issued from 2016 to 2026. But in fact, the cancellation of the visa doesn't mean that all 200,000 people will immediately be lining up at airfields and airports within a week to be deported from there. No, it doesn't mean deportation. It just means that the system is working. Right now, the US is working on identifying and cancelling non-immigrant visas for foreigners. The cancellation of visas does not necessarily mean immediate deportation. Most asylum seekers will be moved to another category, but they will lose their business or tourist status. In the past 6 months, the United States has revoked about 175,000 visas from those convicted or accused of crimes, and also those who have publicly spoken out against US policy, especially in the Middle East. Just imagine, all these thousands of people have to be brought in, checked for what they're saying on the internet, and then blocked. So be careful if you happen to have a tourist visa to the US and you're seeking asylum, they might take action. And also, be careful about speaking out. If you say something bad against Trump or something like that, it's become dangerous to live nowadays. You can't say anything to anyone. Someone gets offended if you call them fat. You say they're fat and they get offended. You tell a fool that he's a fool, he gets offended. You criticize some new official, say that he's not handling his responsibilities, and he gets offended. You say he's an effective manager with an efficiency of minus 138%, he gets offended too. No matter what you say, it's always a problem. What can you do? Where can you go? Write in the comments what you think about this, and how much the world has changed over the past few decades. That is, if you've been alive for a few decades. Next, and the second is about the problems and concerns of the Spanish people. Sanchez in Spain, where I also live, by the way. He is planning to revise the migration laws, so that situations like 70,000 valuable specialists rushing into a Spanish exclave don't happen again. And then they can't be deported back, and suddenly the numbers increase. Crime and the overall public safety situation get worse. Crime and rape rates suddenly go up. Well, it's kind of surprising. Some journalists there, again, show valuable specialists who swam over from Morocco. And they said there are many doctors, many scientists there. Well, I showed them to you. Someone was testing the ground with his forehead, probably to see if it was cracked enough to build an engineering structure. Someone there is a famous neurobiologist. He used different substances for experiments. In general, there was a sea of valuable specialists arriving. And what are you supposed to do with this sea of people? Or how are you supposed to dry it up? Well, that's exactly what the Spanish government is thinking about right now. What are they doing well? Pedro Sanchez urgently convenes the National Security Council, 25 days after the start of the migration crisis in Ceuta. Several thousand or even tens of thousands of specialists are still arriving there, especially on the beaches. And the pressure on public services remains. Accordingly, the People's Party, one of the parties that is more or less popular in Spain, they demand to speed up the repatriation of illegal migrants. Here we're talking specifically about deportation. The meeting will take place at the Moncloa Palace on the eve of the first government session after the summer holidays. The participants will assess the situation, coordinate measures, and then see what can be done next. The representative of the central government in Ceuta, Miguel Angel Perez Turiano, admitted on Monday that the city is still far from normal life. He ruled out the possibility of his resignation. Well, it seems strange. Somehow, on one hand, there's this, and on the other hand, the topic of resignation came up. Well, everyone in general cares more about their own interests, that's clear. Then it is said that his resignation, given that he's such a valuable government official, would be sheer irresponsibility and cowardice. The People's Party is demanding more and more staff to process the repatriation of migrants. Well, that's basically deportation. And the official representative, Borg Semper, demanded that all the immigration units needed there be sent to Ceuta. They'll organize their work in 3 shifts, including at night, to speed up the processing of migrant repatriation cases. It is unacceptable for the processing of returns to take place as if this were a normal situation, because it is an emergency. It is necessary, says Semper, to mobilize as many employees as needed and for as long as necessary. Everyone must return, and as soon as possible. Well, by the way, there is some truth in his words, because I myself am personally familiar with those who work with migrants. You come in, I've already talked about this situation, for example, this organization, this immigration office opens at 9, you come in for your appointment, your card, whatever it's called. The time they scheduled you for, when you're supposed to meet with the official. So you come in, for example, at 9 or maybe 9:30 and you sit and wait. Not because the official has a lot of work, but because the official just isn't there. And mostly, as a rule, these are female officials. And then, for example, she rushes in. This employee shows up somewhere around 10 o'clock with a cup of coffee in her hand and says sweetly, she chats, coos with her colleagues, then sits down at her workplace and starts working. And basically, you can't really say anything, because what are you going to say? Why were you wandering around during work hours? Well, you could have problems with the paperwork. I'm not saying that there will be problems, but in general there could be, probably. I haven't checked. I just sat quietly. I'm that kind of person, you know? Sometimes if you need to, you can just sit quietly instead of making a fuss. To start a revolution. But what can you do? Now, I'm free from these problems because I'm a citizen of Spain, but most people aren't. And now they're trying to change this because in Ceuta, for example, showing up to work at 10 for coffee is really unacceptable, especially since the crime situation there is, well, it's really off the charts, as the Spaniards say. The Council of Ministers of Spain also approved a bill to bring migration and asylum regulations in line with the EU Pact and officially created a unified command to coordinate the authorities' work in Ceuta. Let me remind you, after 25 days, the cabinet officially formalized all of this. The new structure will be headed by the Minister of Territorial Policy and Democratic Memory, Angel Victor Torres. Several other people will also participate in its work, including the head of government and everyone else. Yes, the decision was made a month after the start of the crisis, and naturally it drew sharp criticism from the opposition. But the creation of a unified command is also part of the third phase of crisis response. The first phase was to contain the flow of arriving migrants, then humanitarian aid and organizing the voluntary return of migrants. And now the third phase. We are told that 90% of those who cross the Ceuta border illegally have already voluntarily returned to their countries of origin. Now the authorities face 3 main tasks. To repatriate those who do not have the right to stay in Spain, to promptly and with all necessary safeguards review the cases of minors and people who truly have the right to international protection. Plus, to prevent the crisis from hindering the economic and social recovery of the city. And coordination under a unified command should speed up both the repatriation of migrants and the review of the most complex and sensitive cases. All these tasks require 700 and 180 million, mind you, and the creation of a unified command probably won't cost that much. Because those same local businesses suffered greatly after the massive influx of migrants. And 180 million will go, for example, to the urgent expansion of the city's comprehensive social and economic development plan. But this package wasn't ready at the time of publication. Toby, the video on Tuesday is still being finalized. So let's see what comes out first. In Poland, with Spain it's clear, with the US it's clear. In Poland they're attacking Ukrainians. There are more and more of these kinds of bad incidents when a Pole hears some kind of accent or even Ukrainian speech and attacks Ukrainians. Some Poles attack each other thinking their opponent's accent sounds Ukrainian. There have been such cases, and honestly it's quite an oddity. Casus belli. In Poland, Ukrainians were attacked because of a lecture about Volhynia. A mass fight broke out between 8 Poles and 3 20-year-old Ukrainians. According to the television channel, the incident in Radom happened on August 2nd. What happened there? Early in the morning at a bus stop, a resident of Lublin saw 3 young Ukrainians. He started a conversation with them about where they were from. According to the Ukrainians, the Pole wanted to give them a lecture about the Volhynia tragedy during World War II. Soon the conversation escalated, first into an argument and then into a fight. 7 more Poles gradually joined the fight. Their identities are being established, and they were not acquainted with the initiator of the fight. Well, it's pretty clear here. Apparently the Poles started lecturing and the Ukrainians got upset, but again, who really knows? I think not all the participants were completely sober. In the Polish city, when they were there, they don't mention the time. If it was, for example, early in the morning, then all of this is pretty strange. Ukrainian, says Tomasz, spoke to him rudely, and now a criminal case has already been opened. There is no doubt that the participants from the Ukrainian side will most likely be deported. The detainee is suspected of ethnically motivated violence and group assault. He faces up to 5 years in prison. Oh, and then it also turned out that during the fight he was under the influence of alcohol. By the way, it's not entirely clear who exactly ended up getting hurt. I mean, whose side are they planning to imprison someone from? Now I'm starting to get the impression that Tomasz will be the one who gets imprisoned. But if a person was drunk and started picking a fight based on national hatred towards Ukrainians, then that really deserves all kinds of condemnation, because in general, I can't stand these national conflicts when one side tries to prove something to the other. Who is better? Who is worse? Whose lands belong to whom? Whose czars? Czars? Whose laws are better? Whose religion is better? It's always some kind of nonsense. And that's where all these kinds of conflicts come from. Write what you think about Poland. Maybe you've had some difficult situations. If you're a Pole from Ukraine, in Krakow, Warsaw, Lublin, and other cities. Write if you've had any problems with Poles based on these kinds of arguments or conversations, maybe when going to bars where people bothered you too. Or even just out of nowhere, literally. It's interesting to know what happened there for general understanding. Next, it's Iceland, suddenly. That never happened before. Oh, and now again, Iceland wants to join the European Union. Not to leave it. They're not even in it yet, but they want to join. And for that, they're resuming negotiations. If yes, a referendum will be held. If yes, then negotiations will be restarted. And then there will be a problem with fishing. If not, then the expansion of the Union will remain an issue. The vote will take place on August 29th, and it is this day that the government of Iceland presents as a now or never chance. Either the country will take a step toward EU membership, or it will keep its current status in the European Economic Area, which gives Reykjavik access to the single European market, but does not give it a seat at the table in Brussels. It's absolutely clear that this referendum is about getting a mandate for negotiations. That's what we're being told now. The application was submitted, by the way, back in 2009. The economy in Iceland improved. In 2015, the government said it did not want to continue negotiations, but in 2024, they already want to. Basically, they can't make up their mind. Apparently, it was basically an Icelandic will they or won't they routine. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs with a complicated name, Thordis Katrin Gunnar's daughter, wrote that the international order we have lived in since the end of World War II is cracking. That's why closer cooperation with the EU is a key factor in protecting Iceland's interests. But it's clear, the population is small, the island itself is not big, and there's a lot of fish. And there are several countries at once, including the United Kingdom and some others, that really want to share in this very tasty fish. It's like the saying, to eat the fish and not choke on the scales. That's actually the correct version, not the one you might know or think. Now Poland again. We have Poland again. Oh, no, Germany. Sorry, we already had Poland. I guess I could use some fish myself, because it contains phosphorus, which helps the brain function properly. Several drones were launched at the Leipzig airport. Again, it's the same story, and the first one was the one where they said the bus driver was literally throwing them away with his shoe. Another one was found. The second one crashed into a DHL cargo plane. And turns out there was even a third one. They found it a few days later. The third drone was found 10 days after the August 14th incident in a field west of the airport. They found 50 grams of a substance next to it. According to the initial assessment, it appears to be RDX. It's possible that the perpetrators were planning a much larger attack than previously thought. Well, obviously now they found these Putin business cards, not Yarosh's, but Putin's. And again, the question arises. So if they were planning something like this, why didn't they go through with it? After all, they had drones, they had these substances. What happened there? Why? It's absolutely impossible to understand. It feels like someone just scattered drones with some kind of substance, and now we have a provocation on our hands. Merz says that now those who attacked Leipzig will also be punished. Leipzig Airport, Merz commented for the first time on the alleged attempted explosion. He said that everyone will be punished. The results of the investigation will be presented soon. The federal government will make those responsible for the hybrid attacks pay for the damages. They will be held accountable. According to Merz, the results of the investigation will be presented soon and the situation will be commented on. But that's how powerfully the most popular chancellor in history made his statement. Yeah, in terms of absolute value, of course, it's actually a minus sign there, more like unpopularity. But in terms of absolute value, it's super. And now something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Well, actually not in Denmark, but in this kingdom, in this union, this coalition of lustful, determined, and useless people. Call it whatever you want. Macron announced a major improvement, but Meloni for some reason refuses. She doesn't want to participate in this very coalition. We made a decision, says Macron. But Meloni says she doesn't want to make this decision. In general, one of them wants to, the other doesn't. And the situation, in general, is complicated. For Macron, the exercise becomes an element of deterrence strategy and future security guarantees. It's very important, he says, to continue demonstrating our determination and our readiness. And Italy's choice introduces important differences within the coalition. Rome continues to provide Kyiv with political, moral, and material support, but maintains a veto on the use of Italian military personnel on the territory of Ukraine. And now also on participation in coalition military exercises. Useless, well, in terms of being decisive. Write in the comments everything you think about this. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Bye everyone. To be continued.